You're listening to the Tel Aviv Review here on TLV1. I am Gilad Halpern. Welcome back. I'm now joined here in the studio by Dr. Avi Bareli. He's a historian of Israel and Zionism at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev and author of the new book entitled Authority and Participation in a New Democracy, Political Struggles in Mapai, Israel's Ruling Party, 1948 to 1953. It has recently been published in English by Academic Studies Press, and Avi is now joining us here in the studio. Hello, Avi. Welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Hello, Gilad.
So your book sets out to dispel some of the conventional wisdoms about the party that ruled this country in the first 3 decades of statehood, and perhaps before. One of them is that the undisputed authority of David Ben-Gurion, who is often portrayed as a power-hungry and occasionally dictatorial leader, and the party, on the other hand, is portrayed as a docile apparatus submitting itself voluntarily to his whims.
Yeah.
Now, your book sets out to show that from a very early stage, there was significant resistance to his policies and leadership within the party, and that it was a lot less monolithic than we tend to think.
There has been many Mapais. Mapai is within the Israeli political disputes nowadays. It's a nowadays subject.
Yeah, it's as relevant today as it ever was.
People are talking about Mapai, but they see Mapai in a very one-sided and very biased image. And we have to correct it. We have to look into our history with a critical eye and look into it, because it's very important, very interesting, and still influencing our politics today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ben-Gurion was no dictator. Ben-Gurion is a founder of one of maybe the only democracy that was founded side by side to India, if you want.
As a democracy.
As a democracy after World War II. Democracy, not a regime of angels, but a democracy. So portraying Ben-Gurion as a dictator is misleading, highly misleading. Ben-Gurion was an authoritative leader, democratic leader. And the question is not dictatorship vis-a-vis democracy. Israel was a democracy during the 50s, a new democracy. And the question was, what kind of democracy would it be? That was the real question during the 50s, not whether Israel would be democracy. No one contested its being a democracy. Ben-Gurion was a democratic leader ever since the beginning of his political career.
Mm-hmm. But wouldn't you say that his character had some, I wouldn't say dictatorial, but you said authoritative. He was. It was all about him, wasn't it?
All about him, no. He was a leader that aimed to create authority, not necessarily his own authority, the authority of the institutes he was establishing. For and foremost, the state of Israel's government. He was tuned to create. He was a creator. Ben-Gurion created political institutions, not only the state, also the very authority of for example, of the Jewish Agency. Before Ben-Gurion, the Jewish Agency was something quite different. He was not the first chairman of the Jewish Agency, but he was the real leader heading the Jewish Agency, the first real leader.
Yeah, he turned the Jewish Agency into the government in waiting.
Yes, that's right.
During the mandate period.
So you can say that his political project was creating authority, but creating democratic authority.
That's not necessarily related to his personality, but his role, rather.
You cannot separate them, of course. But yes, his thinking and practice was constitutional and institutional. He was thinking about creating political institutions. That was his main purpose. So one of his main purposes.
Did he invite dissenting voices into the political process? Did he see it as some sort of participatory endeavor?
Ben-Gurion was not operating in a void. He was operating within movement. He was one of its founders, but he was not alone. It's not his own creation, labor Zionism. Now, labor Zionism, and Ben-Gurion is one of his main leaders, were concerned both in political participation. It was called back then chalutziyut, or pioneering, and engaging, being engaged in the national and social project and so on, and both in participation in all its meanings and in creating a political society, a polity. Mm-hmm. In order to create a polity, you have to create it around a political authority. So the project of labor Zionism was both based on participation and authority. That's the title of my book, by the way.
Yeah,
that's why I.
So take us through the tension between these two, because they're not entirely mutually exclusive, but there's a lot of tension between.
There's a lot of tension, and the labor Zionism and the Jewish Yishuv history can be portrayed as going in between those axes of participation and authority, and they are not exclusive. You said right. They are not exclusive, but there is a tension. Now, this tension was there all the time, but it was highly critical during the 50s.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a bit about the dissenting voices that emerged during this period.
Now, I'm just going to do it, but this dissenting voice was not foreign to Ben-Gurion. They voiced ideas that he also shared. The argument, the controversy was on one basis to establish the new state politics. The opposition within Mapai. It was consistent of various groups, but the main idea was that you have to base the new state not only on highlighting the authority of the government and the agencies of the government operates, but also on participatory patterns, let's say patterns, in order for the public to be able to affect the administration of the new state. Now, their idea was that the party would be the main arena for this influencing of the public. So for that purpose, they thought that the new party, the Mapai party, should be organized along lines of inner democracy. The branches and the national institutions of the party, the center, the conference, it had a lot of bodies that were supposed to be arenas for the members of the party to influence the leadership. Now, they did so during the Yishuv period. Now they wanted to transfer it into the context of the state.
So why wasn't it the case? Because in the early days, Mapai was by far the biggest party in the country, and it was also collectivist in the sense that it ruled basically all the walks of life in this country, in the public life of this country. The civil society was relatively small, certainly compared to what it is today. So if this party was like this omnipresent body, and there were so many people who were members of the party in order to get a job in the public sector or whatever. So why wasn't it the case in the outset? I mean, it was a big party. There were many people who were members of the party. So, I mean, the radical suggestion that was made by the opposition in Mapai seems to me a bit redundant. Because
redundant?
Yeah, because they were there. So why weren't they able to influence?
They were big and they ruled. But the question was, how should they rule? Now, big parties are not necessarily democratic parties. You know the historical examples. And you can say more that when you are big, you have to have a hierarchical structure in order to operate. You cannot operate, everybody, let's do something. You have to be organized. So you have to
impose this kind of worldview on the...
That's one thing. Another thing is that the situation during the 50s was quite unique. Israel, the Jewish population of Israel doubled itself within 2.5 years. Now,
with huge waves of immigration.
Huge waves of immigrations from Europe and from the Middle East. It was done by purpose, by the decision of the leadership, but the outcome was a highly heterogenic society that seems to be unrulable. I don't know how to say it in English.
Ungovernable.
Ungovernable, yeah. Now, as I said, the opposition's suggestions were not foreign to Ben-Gurion's worldview. He himself walked between the poles of participation and...
But he just thought they were impractical?
He thought that during, I think, and that's my historical interpretation here, I think that he told himself, because he doesn't say it explicitly, because he has ambiguity here in his thought. But I think that his mind was went like this. He thought that in this historical junction, the Israeli democracy needs authority to be one-sided, to be established on tough democratic but authoritarian regime. Okay? And the Mapai seemed to him as a tool in this. Mapai should engage and recruit the multitudes, mold them, educate them in the leadership spirit, in order for them to become somewhat more unified political society.
So in this struggle, in this face-off,
yes,
who won?
Ben-Gurion, of course. What I'm presenting in my book is the way that was not taken. The way that was not taken. Now, the way that was not taken was not merely democracy. Israel is a democracy, but the way not taken, or the road not taken, as the famous phrase, was putting the new Israeli democracy on participatory patterns that was never in effect anywhere. They suggested something quite new. And they said, like we did the kibbutz, like we did the moshav, like we did this incredible and unique historical process that led to the creation of the state of Israel, now we have to do something that hasn't been done anywhere. In any democracy. We don't want we are socialists, by the way, we don't want to create a new democracy similar to other democracies. We have to create a Zionist socialist democracy. And the way to create it was not, they were, by the way, anti-Soviets, ardent anti-Soviets, ardent anti-communists. The way they saw it was to base the new democracy on participatory lines.
So who were these people? Were they more hardline socialists? Were they
not hardline, but so more... I don't want to...
More collective in the worldview?
Both sides were socialists. Those that were on the hierarchical side...
No, but were they representatives of the kibbutz, of the settlement movement?
Some of them were from the kibbutz, not all of them, not the main body of them. They were mostly from the cities. You can roughly say that you can discern three groups within them. One that was called by then the working intelligentsia, the people that has more education, in working in fields that required academic or generally more educated. Intelligentsia, working intelligentsia, socialist intelligentsia. That's one group, very important one. They are not excluded, but there's you can say three characteristics of the other is that many of them belong to the young guards of the parties, where they were people that either were born in Israel or were educated in Israel, talking Hebrew, were had their main language, and they were socialists. They were maybe you can say a radical socialist, and that's their way. That's their suggestion, creating new politics, not only the society, not only the economy, also creating politics on egalitarian lines. The other group, which is very interesting, was the group of junior or lower strata of the party activists who were thinking for themselves. Now they are coming, all those ministers and Knesset members, and being our rulers, telling us what to do. We want a share in power. So it was not only ideological motivation or controversy, but also power, controversy over power. Another very important thing that you have to remember here is that the Oriental question, so to speak, the fate of the political power that should be shared by the new Oriental immigrants in Israel. Now, the opposition said that, okay, we have a lot in common with them, It was an inner Ashkenazi debate.
Yeah.
You must remember. They say we don't have but we have to create common ground with them, and the way to create common ground is to share power.
Yeah, to invite them into the process.
And to share with a power with them.
And so all these people that were powerful to an extent within the party failed, and Ben-Gurion's line ended up prevailing. Why did they stay within the party and not form external opposition to?
That's very pinpoint question, because they thought that their party is vital for the success of the enormous historical project that it took upon itself.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the huge immigration to Israel, its absorption, the development of Israel, the struggling against the Arabs, the Arab countries. All those huge tasks were considered as Mapai. According to them, the opposition was the only group that can, and they were also supporters of Ben-Gurion. They didn't want to replace the Ben-Gurion. They want to force another
policy on it.
Another regime. Not only it's a debate about the regime,
right?
Not only on policies. It's a fundamental.
Did any of those activists that any members of any of the groups that you just listed became prominent in it? No. So all of them were thrown into the dustbin of history. And
look, Dayan was related to them, but he was not part of them. Avram Hofer, the minister that used to be, after a long delay in his career, who used to be a minister in the government,
in the 70s.
Was one of their leaders. Right. And there were others.
But he was a junior minister. There wasn't any of the leading...
No. It was not an argument within the leadership of Mapai. Most leaders of Mapai stood with Ben-Gurion.
Right.
It was an opposition.
But there wasn't a generational change over the years. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that, in fact, that the opposition was prominent, but not in the high ranks of Mapai's government.
So it didn't trickle up to the leadership in order to overturn it.
They were blocked and they were shut, and they left. I used my book is some kind of archaeology, because I had to unfold them,
to dig them up.
To dig them up.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the
right.
expression.
Avi Bareli, I'm afraid we've run out of time.
Okay.
But thank you very much for coming in. You're a historian of Israel and Zionism at Ben-Gurion University and author of the recently published Authority and Participation in a New Democracy, Political Struggles in Mapai, Israel's ruling party in 1948 to 1953. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. I was delighted.
מה קרה לילד שדיבר אל כוכבים, שהמתיק סודות עם סביון